Everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Masters of Sustainable Forestry Management webinar. And thanks for letting us know where you're listening from. I can see a couple of people have done that here. We've got someone here who's listening from Spain, someone who's a little bit closer, who's listening from Montana, but is from California, someone from Nepal, someone from Iran. That's amazing. So wherever you're listening from, it's a really warm welcome from us. Thanks so much for joining today. And we've got a really great session for you today. We're going to hear from the team behind this program, and we're going to cover all aspects of the program today. We also want to make sure that we answer your questions. So if you do have any questions today, please post them in the Q&A. So you'll see there's a chat and the Q&A. I'm going to turn the chat off soon, and we'll use the chat to share links with you. But if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. In the Q&A, you can also upvote questions. So if you see a question that somebody else has posted and you want to hear the answer to that, make sure that you upvote it, and we're going to answer your most popular questions today. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that we're broadcasting today from the traditional and ancestral territory of the Musqueam. Vancouver, so UBC Vancouver is located on the unceded territory of the Musqueam. The Musqueam are one of the First Nations of Canada. And I know many of you will be learning more about UBC, reading more about the Faculty in Forestry and its programs. But I'd also encourage you, as part of that research, to also read about the Musqueam. And I can post a couple of links in the chat shortly to help you do that. As I'm someone who's moved here, who's settled here from another place, one of the things that's helped me to feel more connected to this land and to the history here is to really understand that history and learn about the history of these lands. And I'll post a couple of links in the chat shortly to get you started on that. Before I turn it over to the team to talk more about the program itself, I just want to give you a quick intro to UBC. UBC is often ranked as one of the top 40 universities globally. It's a real research hub and a real research powerhouse. We have a wide range of different graduate programs. So at the graduate level, we have more than 300 different graduate programs, and they're spread across our 12 different faculties. The graduate community in UBC Vancouver is really excellent, a really dynamic community. And what makes that dynamic is the range of different graduate students that join us. Almost 40% of our graduate students at the moment are international students, and we also have students from across Canada. And those students are researching, they're studying a whole range of different topics, and they're working in some really world-class facilities, and we'll talk more about those facilities in forestry today. So it's a really dynamic graduate school community. In fact, there's over 10,000 graduate students now at UBC Vancouver. So it's also quite a large grad school community as well. Vancouver is a really great city in which to be based. UBC Vancouver is located about 30 to 40 minutes away from downtown Vancouver by bus, so you're not too far from the city. And the lifestyle in Vancouver is one of the main reasons that people join us. If you enjoy the outdoors, it's a really great place. But also it has the feel of a big city without it being too big. Vancouver is pretty easy to navigate. It's a relatively safe city, and it's a place where many people call home for their graduate studies. I'll post a couple more links as well about our graduate programs and about Vancouver as a location in the chat shortly as well. But now I'll pass it over to Ken, who's going to talk more about the Faculty of Forestry.
Great. Thank you, Shane. Good morning, everyone, and I guess good afternoon and good evening. It's fantastic to see the diversity of places that people are zooming in from. My name is Ken Byrne. I'm a registered professional forester in BC. I'm also a graduate of UBC, and so I'm quite familiar with the university and the city. And so this is the building. Shane is I think we've lost the screen share. Oh, there we go. This is a few shots of the forestry building. This is where you the space you have to study. This is some of the common space in the atrium. And for the MSFM program, we have actually a dedicated classroom, which is pretty unique at the university. So you have your own space to work in. We also have research forests, both in Vancouver, just west or east of Vancouver in Maple Ridge, and up in the interior and near Williams Lake. We heavily use the Maple Ridge Research Forest, the Malcolm Knapp Research Forest, for our outdoor classroom and our field work for a term project. And we also have the benefit of really world-class faculty and graduate students and postdocs to share their enthusiasm and their expertise with the MSFM students. Next slide, please, Shane. So the MSFM program, or the Master's Sustainable Forest Management program, is a 9-month course-based program. It's pretty intensive. You're coming in, and what you're bringing is are the foundational studies, that are required for a forestry program. And what we layer on top of that is all the forestry specific disciplines in silviculture and forest operations, forest health, economics, and policy. The program typically stretches from August to April of 24 to 25 this year. Although officially the course starts with some pre-reading, which begins in the beginning of July. There are 2 paths for completing the program. It can be done in the 9-month time frame, or you can take a year of leave and come back and do the second term the following year, which for the first time in the program's history, we have 1 student coming back this year in January to do the 22-month program. Next slide, please. So what will you learn? Well, we really pride ourselves on real-world experience in land management. We integrate courses in land information acquisition and analysis, and policy and economics, and we integrate those into capstone courses that are designed to develop actionable plans both at the site level and the landscape level. You learn to integrate and synthesize quantitative data and merge that with all the complexity of qualitative values, social values, cultural values into these actionable plans that are intended to be implemented on the land base. You'll also have the opportunity to utilize state-of-the-art forest landscape modeling tools, GIS tools that are really effective and necessary in developing these plans and doing these analyses. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the research forests and the hands-on field work. I'm within the program. I'm responsible for 3 capstone courses, and one in the summer, one in the fall for site level plan, and one in the winter term, which is a landscape level plan. We go to off-site locations to meet with professionals, a full range of professionals in the industry, from government to consultants to industry to public consultation, Indigenous people, and it's just intended to give you a full appreciation of the complexity and the creativity that's required to manage our forests. We heavily use the research forests, and all of this kind of comes together in these capstone projects, which are really that hands-on fieldwork experience is really stressed. And we have the pleasure today of having a recent grad, Pauline Flotat, who graduated from the program last year. And I'm sure, Pauline, if you'd like to add any observations or from your perspective, how your experience was in these courses.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, so my name's Pauline, and I graduated just this past April. I found that the hands-on field work and having opportunities to work in the research forest was quite unique to this program. And it was beneficial because it created that kind of connection, what you're learning in the classroom and what you really see in the field. And I think it was kind of one of the most valuable experiences, and walking away, the things that I remember the most is having the opportunity to be out in the field and applying your knowledge and actually seeing it on the ground with your own eyes. So I do think that's quite unique to this program, and you can really apply your work and really take that forth in your career. And even being able to see different aspects of forestry in BC. So not only Malcolm Knapp, but we had an opportunity to go up to Anaheim Lake, which is a completely different forest from down here on the coast. And just seeing the differences in the diversity of forests within BC and the complexity of forest management, it just really solidified what we were learning in the classroom. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on that one.
Thanks very much, Pauline. Shane, if we could go to the next slide, perfect. So for career opportunities as a graduate, you'll have the expertise. It is an accredited program. I will add that it's accredited by the Canadian Forestry Accreditation Board to become a registered professional forester in Canada. We are also accredited with the Society of American Foresters for those of you who might be interested in seeking work as a certified forester in the United States. We have had graduates that have graduated and gone abroad to other jurisdictions in Europe and elsewhere as well. Just like in Canada, there's a very high demand for our graduates. I get calls, almost on a weekly basis asking me about, potential candidates that would be good employees for their companies, whether they are government or a consultant or a licensee. Some have gone on to work in conservation sort of organizations where, forestry, of course, is not just about timber. It can be used to manage forests for water, for conservation, for wildlife, and we do bring that into our program. Over on average, last year, people seeking employment were better than 95% employment rate so far, and depending on your preferences, it can vary, but that's a pretty accurate average over the last several years or over the course of the whole program. And Pauline, she was certainly one of our excellent graduates who got a position with the Ministry of Forests here in BC. And I don't know, Pauline, if you want to describe a little bit about what you're doing now, and how some of the things that you did in the program have helped you in your job now.
Yeah, so yeah, that's correct. I'm working for the Ministry of Forests now. I'm a licensed authorizations officer. Usually that doesn't mean too much to folks, but I work mostly in stewardship and tenures. And I feel pretty fortunate that I was able to get the position in a region in the province that I was hoping to get a position in. And I suppose the things that I work on is pretty diverse. I feel like I work on all sorts of different projects, but currently I'm doing a lot of contract administration for reforestation, for silviculture surveys. I'm participating in the forest range evaluation program, planning all the field days, collecting field data, entering all the data. And then moving forward, I'm going to be assisting my coworker on wildfire risk reduction. We've got some fuel treatments going on in the Sea to Sky district that I work in. And there's going to be more coming down the pipeline with that. We're looking at future reforestation on some fires, maybe in potentially some other areas. And then coming this winter, I'm going to start helping more on the tenure side. So that's like road permits, cutting permits, licensing kind of stuff. So it's pretty diverse. I'm fortunate that I get to kind of dip into all sorts of different aspects of forestry. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that MSFM helps with, is that it does provide you quite a breadth of knowledge. There's so much to learn. Like it's a pretty intensive program. You can't learn everything in total depth in that short time frame, but it exposes you really well to all the different aspects of forest management, especially within BC. And so I feel like I've been able to touch on all these different topics, and then I can kind of see that once I've started my position, I'm somewhat familiar with it, and then now that I'm working in it, I can dive deeper. So that's what I think MSFM did well, was the breadth. And
That's
also
awesome.
emphasizing the complexity of forest management. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Pauline. And actually, even speaking as a lecturer in forestry, I think one of the most exciting things about forestry is the opportunity for ongoing learning and continuing education. I'm still learning, and I think that's one of the exciting things about forestry, is that you can never know it all. And it's always interesting, and it's always diverse depending on where you want to take your career. Thanks, Shane. Next slide. So there's two pathways. As I mentioned, you can graduate in 10 months, basically from July, when you start your pre-readings for the summer course that begins in August in person, and graduate or finish in April. This is, probably the best option for students wanting to devote a concentrated period to study and graduate in the shortest time. There are some other considerations in the second option on the next slide. You can also go, next slide, please. You can also go with option 2, and in some cases, you might have family obligations, or maybe you can't be away from your current employment. You plan to return to your current employment. You can take a year off and then complete the program for the second term in the following year. So it is up to you. We've had, we now have one person who's done this option, and I think it'll work out just fine for both us in the program and for the student involved in that case. This person's employer didn't want them to be away for a full 9 months, and valued them so much they wanted them to come back for a year of leave from the program before returning. So those are the two program pathways. Certainly if you have any questions, my email is available I believe on the website. If not, we can put it in the chat. I'm certainly open to having follow-up Zoom meetings, in-person meetings, email inquiries. Please feel free to contact me. Often you have, after a presentation and webinar like this, you have some questions that kind of come into your mind a few hours or a few days afterwards. Certainly open anytime to those questions. Next slide. So I think this is where we turn it over to Mung, and she can describe the general admission requirements.
Yes, thank you, Ken. Hi, everyone. Good morning from Vancouver. My name is Mung, and I'm the admission and admin coordinator for the MSFM program. My role here is primarily supporting you in the application process, and it can be anything from clarifying requirements to help you troubleshooting any some of the tech issues, or directing you to people who can help you. So you can consider me as your first point of contact if any issues arise during your application. Today, I'm going to give a brief overview of the admission requirement, and later followed by the application processes walkthrough. And before I start, I just want to highlight that this is an overlook. So I'm giving you the brief overview of what's generally expected, but the specific details may vary depending on individual applicant's background, such as a credential, citizenship, and everything. So to start off, we have a general requirement on the academic background, again, specific to the credential and which country your institutions are from. But generally, we're looking for the GPA, we're generally looking at a minimum average of B+ range in senior levels, equivalent to what UBC is holding. And in addition to the academic background and GPA requirement, we are also looking at your English language proficiency. So for this requirement, the test is not required for everyone, but if you're required to meet this criteria, you'll be asked to do a test in designated test agencies such as TOEFL, IELTS, KO, and PTE. I am going to share additional links to those requirements for your reference in future. And another highlight that I want to emphasize on is the application deadline. This year, our application opened in October 1st, and the admission deadline, the application deadline is February 15th. It is very important that you start preparing your application ahead of time, so that avoids you having the stress of having to submit last minute. And next slides first. So that kind of leads into how to apply. The application process at UBC at our program is actually super simple. I will share the link to how to apply in the chat later, but basically you go into the link and you follow through the instructions on and complete the online application. And once you've completed application, you'll be asked to make payment to the application fee, and by then your application is submitted. In addition to completing the online application survey, you will be asked to provide a number of documents. And the first one is the scanned copies of official transcript. And I just want to reiterate, it's a scanned copies of official transcript. So there is a certain requirement of what kind of documents is acceptable. In addition to that, we are requiring 3 references, and with minimum 1 should be coming from an academic source. And lastly, again, if you're required to do your English language proficiency test, you'll be sending them to us to complete your application. And of course, the usual letter of intent, curriculums are all required. And yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so I know I'm going through it super fast and it's very general. So if you have any questions and if any of you want to discuss your individual cases with us, feel free to schedule an advising appointment with me or Ken. Depends on if you want to talk about the more academic questions or just want clarification on the application process. And our website has a lot of information, which is super valuable, and definitely encourage you to take a look online. And if you have any questions, you can also email us at the address listed on the slides. And this is all my parts, and I'll pass back to Shane.
Thanks so much, Mung, and thanks to Ken and Pauline as well. That was a really great presentation, really great overview of the program. I'm going to start sharing the slides now, and let's have a look, and let's take some of your questions here. Thanks for the questions you've posted already. Please let us know any other questions that you have. But I'm just noticing here that we've got 2 or 3 questions around scholarships or assistantships. I'm just wondering if we could speak briefly on that, and if there are any scholarships available.
I can speak to that.
Thanks.
So, and Ken, feel free to jump in to add. The MSFM program is a professional program, so the expectation is a self-funded study. And unfortunately, we don't have any direct funding sources linked to this program, but if any student found any source outside and found our program qualified for application, they can feel free to do so themselves. But unfortunately, we don't have the resource here.
Yeah, that's it. In terms of funding and scholarships, typically more funding is allocated towards research programs. So research programs are often much longer. For example, if you were doing a PhD, it might take you several years to complete. A more professional program like the MSFM program is really geared towards getting you back into your profession, getting you back into the workplace with the right skills and as quickly as possible, really. So there may not be as many scholarships available. I will say that if you are doing sort of a general search for external awards, I'd recommend you take a look at the scholarships, awards and funding page. I'll put the link into the chat. So that could be one place that you search for external scholarships, but also search more broadly as well, particularly if you're an international student. There may be scholarships available in your home country that we will not be aware of, but you may be able to tap into as well. Financing grad school is obviously something that needs planning as well. So right now you're thinking about your application and you're doing some planning there. But I'd also encourage you to think about planning your finances too. And we do have a cost of living calculator on our website, and I'll post a link to that in the chat too. So do some financial planning as well. And think about this as an investment in your future career. But really understanding that investment and doing some planning ahead of time will make sure that it's not stressful for you financially when you're a grad student. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. There's a question here from Philly who asks, well, they say they're working as a forest management technician at the city of Coquitlam. They graduated from the urban forestry program at UBC, but they're interested in this program as it would provide them or help them get their RPF designation. Is there sort of a part-time option for this program, and would they need to leave their job to do this program?
Yeah, I can take this. Flea, the hands-on learning, the experiential type learning nature of the program really precludes being able to offer courses online, fully online. Of course, during COVID, we had to do a little bit of hybrid creativity there, but it's still, even during COVID, we still had that in-person experience in the MSFM program. In fact, it was the only program at UBC that was still in person during COVID, and it's a really necessary part of the program. I totally understand, the push and pull of employment demands, and so given that, perhaps the 22-month option. I mean, certainly a job with the city of Coquitlam that's a great job that you don't want to let go of, and that's maybe that extended option where you come for the summer and fall term and then go back and work and then come back for another 3 months for the winter term might be an option for you.
Is it okay if I add something to that?
Sure.
Yeah, because I do find one thing that I really valued from the program was that you are in this cohort and it's pretty intensive, you work together. So really immersing yourself in that, creating those relations with your peers and then supporting each other through that program is kind of a key feature of this program. So I think you'd be missing out if it was something that was, you're kind of doing independently, because you really do need that support from your peers.
That's really interesting. And Pauline, could you talk more about that in terms of, how many people were in the class in your cohort, and how did you work together? Were you in small groups, and what did that look like day to day or week to week for you?
So I think our cohort was a bit smaller than usual. We were 17. I've heard it's been a little bit more in the past, and we worked in small groups. It could be anything from 2 or 3 to 4 or 5. And we do also have individual assignments, and it varied. It varied on the extent, for your landscape level, like your big capstone, you're in groups of 4, I think 4 or 5. Site plan, we're about the same as well, which is a larger project. And then sometimes smaller groups for smaller assignments. And it was kind of necessary because everybody has their own strengths, and there's a lot of information that you're taking in, and people are processing it at different rates, or somebody got one piece and somebody picked up on something else, and then you're able to bring it together and create something that's even better, which is pretty reflective of what happens in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So I do think that is a key feature of the program that you need to take on.
Yeah, and I guess you're making pretty strong connections. Like if the cohort is 17 people, you must be have a pretty strong connection with those folks. Has that been helpful in terms of, you know, your the next steps in your career? We did have someone post a question as part of their registration in terms of what sort of support was available in helping you with the next career next steps. But I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, as well as, you know, were you able to leverage your network, or is that network helpful to you finding that next job and moving on your career?
Yeah, I think so, because I think we still keep in touch. We still have our MSFM group chat, and a lot of us are working towards our RPF right now. So we're working through the modules and figuring out that whole process. And often there's, you know, chat like, hey, has anyone looked at this module? And I have questions about this. So that support network in moving forward in your career is sustained as much as you have to put in the effort for it, but it is still there. You do have those people to rely on, and because we're kind of at the same step and, you know, inching our way along together. Yeah, so I do think it's pretty valuable to have that.
That's great. That's really interesting to hear. Okay, the next. Sorry, Ken.
Sorry, if I could add just a little bit to that too, as well. As like, I'm a lead lecturer in the program, but I'm also the coordinator, and you know, part of my role too is to assist with mentoring, you know, reviewing CVs, arranging to bring employers into the classroom to describe, you know, what their expectations are. So students have a very realistic perspective on what is needed in the workforce, and we're, you know, not just myself, but other people in the faculty, we're all here to support the students, you know, both personally and professionally in their pursuits. It is a professional program, and, you know, getting everybody together in those cohorts, as Pauline described, the projects are too big for any single person to take on by themselves. They really need to rely on their colleagues and their peers to effectively work together to complete these plans. And so being a professional program, you actually learn through practice in implementing these plans. And, you know, to that point, I see from Nusheen the question of, I just wanted to know that in this journey, are students designing anything? Are they suggesting design ideas? Yes, certainly. In the site level plan, we have a block out at the research forest that is scheduled to be harvested in one way or another. So the task of each crew is to come up with a site level operational plan, which includes assessing all the ecology, any of the values, the social values, the visual quality values, cultural values, and bringing all that information into an actionable plan in how to harvest it. How much value in wood is going to come off of that? What sort of harvesting systems are going to be used? And what are some other, you know, water quality? Do we have to treat the streams specially? And most of all, what are the needs of the client? And the client being the manager of the research forest. And then they put forward these plans. Each group will present or defend that plan in front of their peers and whatever faculty and maybe fellow graduate students. This year, I'm going to open up the defenses to all graduate students in the faculty so they can come and see what we're doing in this program. And it's really exciting. We're doing a lot of really cool things. And then we will give those plans back to the manager at the research forest and the forester who works there. And, you know, sometimes they take some of the ideas, sometimes they don't. But what is unique about this is that the block that they work on ends up getting harvested later on in the fall or over the winter. And then we bring the class back out in the second term to have a look at what was done, and they can have a professional opinion on what was done compared to what they suggested in that design. Similarly, in the landscape level plans, we go and we work with a client. So Pauline mentioned Anaheim Lake. Well, we work with Alcacho First Nation in that project, and we went out for kind of a recce trip to meet with elders and meet with people in the community, meet with managers of that landscape, and find out, well, what was important to them. And then each crew kind of integrated based on a theme, various scenarios of what would happen across the landscape. This coming year, we're going to be working with the Soyuz Indian Band in their First Nations woodland license and West Boundary Community Forest. So that's in southern BC. Every year, we have a different location and a different client that we work with on the landscape level project. The site level project is always in the research forest, but the landscape level project is always somewhere else in BC. And if at all possible, we try to involve a community or a tenure, which is a form of forest ownership that is connected to a First Nation, so that we weave all of those First Nation values throughout the projects.
That sounds pretty amazing. That sounds really great experience. Just looking at this question here is from Grace. Top question. I'm wondering if there's a particular lens or outcome that is more focused on, such as forest management for timber versus conservation, or if all are equally discussed.
I don't think I would put a stopwatch on each sort of how forest is managed on each value, but I think a greater emphasis is on the integration of those values. So you can't really have conservation without some form of timber management, because that's what's ultimately going to pay for your conservation. You will certainly learn that the perspectives of managing a forest, for example, for water quality or recreation or conservation. As I mentioned, we have former grads, one who's working for a conservation society in Ontario. Others have gone on and worked in urban forestry, which might be more of parks or recreation or social values. And certainly many have gone into managing forests for timber production. But even when you're managing for timber production, you cannot ignore all these other values. They are integrated as part of the plan, and you have to accommodate them, if not at the site level, then across the landscape. So, we don't siloize these different values or these different purposes for managing forests, but we do highlight that forests can be managed for multiple different purposes.
Great. There's a question here from Sion. Is there an application fee waiver? I can speak about the general fee waiver that we offer at UBC, but do you offer any specific waivers for your program?
Mung, I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to that one.
So it's what Shane has mentioned. There is the application fee waiver that applies to citizens from a designated list of countries. And sorry, I was just looking for the link to put into the chat.
Link, don't worry, I'm going to post the link.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so definitely take a look on this site, and if your citizenship qualifies, you just have to make sure at the time of application, put your citizenship and ensure that you're currently residing in your home country, and the system will automatically waive your application fee. So by the end of your application, you just have to submit, and they won't prompt any payment option. We do not have any other waiver specific at Forestry, but yeah, if you have any questions at all, feel free to send us an email. We can look at individual cases separately.
That's great. Thanks, Mung. And yeah, if you scroll down to the bottom of the last link in the chat, you can read more about the application fee waivers that we offer. Excellent. I do have some other questions that people sent through to us as part of the registration for the program. I was going to, sorry, Ken.
Sorry, I just see one more question from Nisheen, and it looks like a bit of a comment, but there's a question embedded there about linked with landscape architects directly. So when I talk about this, is just a point of clarification. When I talk about a landscape level plan, this is a forested landscape that could be over several thousand hectares or kilometers even. And whereas I think the linkage, where there could be a linkage with forestry, with landscape architects in the urban forestry context, you would certainly be working with urban planners. and potentially that part of that team may be landscape architects. And that is a particular stream or a particular scope of practice that you could pursue coming out of the program as an RPF. I think one person mentioned that they did the urban forestry program and see the value in getting their RPF. And there certainly is a lot of RPFs that work for cities and municipalities. That would be kind of the context where you'd be involved with landscape architects. And I just wanted to make that distinction between a landscape level forest land management plan and working with a team of people that include landscape architects.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for jumping on that question. Do let us know any other questions that you have. There's still time. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer them. There was an interesting question that was sent in to us. It's actually in 3 parts, so I'll read them out to you. The first part was, obviously, this is a relatively intensive program. Do you know if students worked part-time? Do any students work part-time in the program? Maybe we can just deal with that one first, and I'll come back to the other 2 parts of the question afterwards. But is there scope to work part-time as well as studying?
Well, the short answer is yes. I mean, students do work part-time. It is an intensive program, so you would need to manage your time well. You know, maybe Pauline, you can provide some comment of how much for extra time you felt you had for a part-time job. I don't know how many of your peers in your class had part-time jobs.
I'm trying to remember if anyone did last year. There might have been one person, but I do remember the year before, what's her name, Georgie, as she mentioned, she had worked. So it is possible, but exactly what you said, time management is a big part. And since it's so short, I chose not to work because I thought, okay, I just want to commit to this. I want to get the most out of this program and just focus on this. And so it's really up to you if you really feel like you need to work, but time management is key. And kind of connected to that is that I kind of felt there is kind of a piece of ownership in this program where it's up to you how much you want to get out of it. You know, you can really commit a lot more than what's being asked of you to get even more out of it. So it's not like this is the work and this is exactly what you do. If you want to delve a little bit deeper, or if you want to ask more questions, or if you want to do extra readings, it's up to you. So do you create the space that you allow yourself to do that to get more out of it? Or do you want to work instead? It's kind of, I do find it's what you make of it as well, and how much you want to engage with it.
Well, that's great. And actually related to your own interests, we do have, there is room for really one actual elective in the program. Some are listed on the website as electives, but really they're only electives if you get an exemption or from the faculty involved. So there is one elective. You can either take a course or you can take a directed study. So I'm currently working on building a bank of projects with community forests that cover a whole range of topics to address you know, that need for students to maybe explore some of these other areas that you want to dive deeper into. And I think, Pauline, you did a directed study as well in your for your elective, and I know a couple of other people who have done a directed study as their elective, and I think got quite a bit out of that.
Yeah, I definitely value that experience. That was definitely a highlight for me because I got to focus on something I was really interested in. And I do find that the topic that I did work on has actually been pretty valuable in some of the work that I'm doing right now.
So I see the MasterCard Foundation. Sadly, the MasterCard scholarship was discontinued. So yeah, I know a couple of years ago it was still in place, but I think last year was the first year that it was discontinued.
Thanks, Ken. And another question, it was from the same person who posted the previous question, but it was around the pre-reading package that students are sent before the program begins. What does that look like? What sort of content is involved in the pre-reading?
Oh, okay, so that's there is for example, there is a very intensive GIS course. GIS is an important skill that is required in forestry, and I do recognize that not everybody has a foundational GIS course. So this year, what I added in was a series of videos to bring people up to a base level of GIS practice. There's also an online course. In addition to that, we have readings on First Nations values. We have readings on the biogeoclimatic ecosystem classification system in BC, which is a core structure that we build our site assessments around. And there are other topics on forest economics, forest management, that the students complete readings on and are expected to have that sort of foundational starting point, so that everybody's kind of starting on at the same, roughly the same level. I will add, though, that some people in some areas are going to be more skilled than others. And one thing that has not been mentioned about the program is this aspect of, peer-to-peer learning. So, we've had in the program, we've had engineers, we've had people in biologists, we've had teachers, we've had people who are in environmental sciences. So you bring all of these all these disciplines together, and each person has learned something in their undergrad that maybe some others have not learned, and they're able to share that experience and share that knowledge with their peers in the class. So that's also a unique aspect of the program.
Great. Final part of the question was around housing. Are there many options for student housing around the university? I can speak to this briefly, but did any of you want to jump in on housing?
Well, it's just something that I only became familiar with this year, but apparently starting this year, it's a pilot that and I don't know, Shane, maybe you can correct me on this. It was a pilot that MSFM students were given priority for student housing. I don't know if that's still going to be carrying forward. I certainly hope it is, because people are just coming for a short time, and housing in Vancouver, if you do come into the program, that is a strong priority to make sure that you secure housing before starting the program in August.
Yeah, that pilot program is continuing, as I understand it, and graduate programs are assigned some priority housing that they can then, designate to certain students. Just on housing, like Ken said, housing it can be expensive in Vancouver. The key thing is just to do your research early and plan ahead. You can apply for housing on campus. So there are, I think, over 1,300 spots for graduate students in UBC campus housing, which is managed by UBC. And I'm going to post the links into the chat about the housing. The good thing that you should know is that you can actually register and apply for on-campus housing even before you've submitted your application to the program. So if you're working on your application at the moment, at the same time as that, we'd encourage you to actually submit a housing application as well. And that means your name is on the list there. Obviously, there's a lot of people who apply for that, but having your name on the list at this stage would be advantageous. Also, we do have a couple of webinars about housing that are coming up shortly, and I'll post a link to our Info Sessions page, and I'd recommend you join us for those. In those housing webinars, we're going to focus primarily on housing through UBC, but we will also touch on off-campus housing as well and give you some advice on that. So I've posted a link to the info sessions. One resource as well that we do offer through the Faculty of Graduate Studies is once you have an offer of admission and once you've accepted that offer, you'll have access to an online portal, which we call Community. And through the Community portal, you can actually connect with other graduate students. So often students will pair together and rent an apartment or rent a house together, and that can be a cost-saving option. And often graduate students will use that space to advertise if they have a spare room. So often, that's a great way to find housing as well. If your expectation is that you want to rent a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Vancouver, you just understand that will be quite expensive. But there are still a lot of great, more affordable options through UBC Housing or through by coming together and sharing with other grad students that make things more affordable. But just understand the situation and make sure that you have the right expectations and know what to expect. You probably won't be able to live in downtown Vancouver in your own apartment unless you have lots of savings. So just to understand that at the beginning is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I'll emphasize, Shane, to the fact that you can apply for housing before you are accepted. Like apply right away. I know from personal experience, I've lived in UBC student family housing myself as a graduate student, and I applied I think about a year before I ended up getting accepted into a graduate program. So and it was timed really well. So a spot came up right at the time that I was starting. So I would recommend going that route. It's a nice community on campus. There's a lot of restaurants and stores. You're on campus so that you can take part in a lot of grad student activities that are going on campus. And yeah, it's good points all around.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Ken. The question here from Nushin, it sounds like they're interested in applying to the PhD program. But Mung, do you deal with those questions, or would there be someone they could email?
Yes, so I don't administer the thesis stream, but I do want to say our thesis stream is also great programs, and if you're interested, definitely encourage. I just put the email contact for my colleague Robin, who is administering all the thesis stream programs, and feel free to email her if you have any questions.
That's great. So we just got a few minutes to go now. If you've got any final questions, let us know. I just wanted to ask Pauline and Ken another question. People listening today, they'll hopefully be joining the program, or they may be joining another graduate program. They're certainly hoping to join grad school soon. What are some tips on being successful in grad school generally, but specifically on this program? What would you say are some things that people can do to set themselves up for success at grad school?
I don't know, Pauline, do you want me to lead, or do you want to offer some suggestions?
I do have suggestions, but do you want to start? And then
Sure, I can start. Time management is critical, I think. Staying on top of the tasks, because each the material, the curriculum is really latticed on top of each other. So not falling behind, staying on top of the lectures and assignments is really important. Staying, I think curious. And Pauline, you alluded to it, that you get out of the program what you put into it. You don't need to. Yes, you can graduate by putting in just sort of what is prescribed and everything like that. But I encourage you to seek to accomplish more than just the bare minimum. You're going to get more out of it. You're going to get more response from both your colleagues, your peers in the class. You're going to get more response and help from faculty, because if faculty see that you're interested in a certain topic, I mean, we're all passionate about forestry. That's why we're here and we're here to share our experience and share our knowledge. And if we don't know that you have certain interests, then we don't know how to help you further your career. Time management, staying curious, and making sure that when you come into the program, you know, you have a fire in your belly that, yes, I'm going to accomplish something big here, and I'm going to put all of my effort into it.
Yeah, the time management piece is a big one. And like, so have a system to organize yourself. There's a lot of things to manage in this program, and lots of different materials, and just find a way that works for you and that'll help your time management. And ask questions, because somebody's going to say something and you're not going to know what it means, and guaranteed half the class might not know what it means. So maybe it's just an abbreviation you see on a slide and you're like, oh, what is that? Or just anything. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I asked a lot of questions, and afterwards students, like my classmates, were like, thank you for asking that, because I had no idea what that meant. And so that plays into that curiosity piece. And yeah, and when you ask questions, also ask questions outside of the classroom as well. You know, maybe there's somebody else in the faculty that can answer something for you. And so seek help, I guess, essentially from other mentors, other instructors, from your peers. And I really tried to treat the program as, okay, it's going to be intensive for these 9-10 months. I'm just going to kind of commit myself to this and immerse myself in it to get as much as I can out of it. And then I'll have other aspects of my life back when I graduate, kind of attitude. So I treated it kind of like a full-time job and a little bit more. And so kind of structured my day that way, where, you know, I still got up, you know, and then in the classroom at a certain time, worked till a certain time in the day, and yeah, treated it that way.
Yeah, those are really good points. There's no dumb questions. Often if you have a question about something, chances are 80 to 90% of the rest of the class have the same question and are just afraid to ask. But so never be afraid to ask questions. Sorry, Shane, I cut you off.
No. I was just actually saying that was all really great advice. Thank you both. That was really, really awesome. There's one more question here that I hope Mung could answer from Lonnie. They've been away from academia for a few years now. What should they do about the educational or the academic reference? Have you got any tips on that?
Yeah, so that is kind of a more common than expected question we see from applicants, especially applicants who are in the professions for so many years, and it is hard for them to find the academic reference. So the first step I would recommend is still try to get an academic reference. Just as Ken and Pauline both commented on, the program is rigorous and demanding, and we really want to make sure the student is successful in the program. And one way to assess that is perhaps looking from an academic reference point of view to see how the student previously performed. But we, understanding the challenges some applicants may facing, we do adopt a more broad sense of what is considered academic. So it's not necessarily you have to get a reference from a professor in your undergrad degree. It can be an instructor from another course you've taken, anyone who has taught you in the past. So hopefully that broader definition of academic reference will provide some leeway for a student to secure one. And if by the end of the process, you're still not able to find an academic reference, my next recommendation is contact us. And that will be on an individual basis, and we definitely will have to kind of treat it case by case and work with you to see if any other alternatives is available. But the bottom line is try, but we will support as much as possible.
Great, thanks, Mung. That was really helpful. Excellent. Okay. I think we've come to the end of our hour now. It's almost 10:30 here. Just want to say a really big thank you to Ken, Pauline, Mung. That was a really excellent session, really informative. So thanks so much for your time. I'll leave it to you if you want to say any final words before we wrap things up. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. No, thank you, Shane, for hosting this. It's always a pleasure to describe our program and describe forestry to people who are interested in coming into the profession. There's a huge need for diversity in the profession. And I think that's one of the things that this program attracts. Like I mentioned a few of the undergrad disciplines that have come into the program. I'll add too that it varies from year to year, but this year we have a huge international component in the program. We have representation from Peru, Mexico, Scotland, Hong Kong, China, and the United States. So it's another really exciting thing about having that diversity from not only different professions, but also different parts of the world. It's something that we really need in forestry. It's not like the bad old days where people went into forestry because they just wanted to go out into the bush and not talk to people. That's not what forestry is anymore, and thankfully so. So yeah, if you're interested, it's been a really enjoyable career so far for me, and I'm not done yet, and I'm sure it will be the same for you.
Amazing. Thanks. That's a great way to wrap things up, I think. Good luck with your applications, everybody, and we'll hopefully see you at UBC Vancouver soon. But we'll say goodbye for now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.